Hi, it's Holly and welcome to my series review of the Book of Ivy duology by Amy Engel. So it's the Book of Ivy and the Revolution of Ivy. And I gave the Book of Ivy 4.5 stars and the Revolution of Ivy 4 stars. I thought this was a really solid series. And basically what it's about is this is a girl named Ivy, surprise, and it's a dystopian story. She lives in this town, and when the town was founded, there was basically two families who had two different political belief systems, and one won the battle. But in order to keep the peace, the two families and the two factions marry their children off. And Ivy is from the losing faction, and she's literally descended, she's a part of that family, and so she is supposed to marry the son of the president who's in charge from the side that won. She's been raised to marry him and then kill him so that her family can take over and have justice and all that stuff. But of course it's a dystopian, so things don't necessarily go that way, and there is definitely a romance in here and everything. So let's get into more bookish things and let me put these down. So I want to talk about the characters. So Ivy is the main character, obviously, and I personally really liked her. I found her very easy to connect with. I liked her voice. She just had this very easygoing, natural voice to her. She had her own thoughts, but she was also a good person. She wasn't perfect, but she wanted to see the best in people. She's also very passionate about things. Sometimes she gets a little cray-cray because she's so passionate, but in general she's a good person. I think in a lot of ways she reminds me of America Singer from the Selection series, but doesn't have the bad things that America had, those personality characteristics that are really annoying. And then there's Bishop, who is the president's son, and he's the love interest, and I thought he was very nice. He was so sweet, so gentle. He was very beta hero-y, and I just immediately was like, oh my gosh, love you. There was a ton of side characters, and what I really liked about them was Amy Engel took the time. She took kind of what I consider stock characters in dystopians, like the mother character and the evil president or leader character and all of these other things, and kind of turned some of them, took your expectations of what these characters should be and manipulated them, and sometimes she played into it and other times she changed it, but it kind of made it a little different and a little intriguing because you didn't know if what your thoughts of what a dystopian should be were true or whatever. Speaking of that, their dystopian world I found really interesting. It reminded me a lot of the TV show Revolution, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't watch, which is why it's not on TV anymore. But they have power and stuff unlike Revolution, but it's very similar in that these characters still know a lot about what life was like before. I think it was a war that happened that destroyed the world, and they're very aware of things, and I really liked that. Sometimes dystopians are very disconnected, and it's how did that happen, or they're super regressive, and that's fine. It has a place, but I like that this there was still power, there was still refrigerators, but they couldn't really use them because they don't have Freon anymore and stuff like that, and they still have legal systems and they still understand the basics of politics, but none of them were alive during the United States or any other country that existed before. She also looked at the dystopian elements in a very honest way to me. To me, it wasn't very black and white. A lot of times I think in dystopian books you have good and bad, and she showed especially with the political decision, there's these two competing political ideologies, and showing that from certain perspectives they both have merit, and that's very true. I mean, or at least from my perspective, no political system is the perfect political system. It has to do with the people that you're ruling, or who are, being, in that country or that land, and it has to do with the environment that you live in and all of that. And I think that's very important. And sometimes I think dystopians can get a little preachy about what government policy should be, and I like that to me, I feel like she didn't do that. Okay, so like I said before, there was definitely a romance here between Bishop and Ivy. I really enjoyed it. It was very cute, very sweet. It developed very naturally and slow enough for me, especially in dystopians. Romances tend to be a little like bang, bang, bang because there's such high stakes in the world. But this was definitely slower. They also face like normal couple challenges. That's another thing, is I feel like a lot of times in fantasy, dystopian, paranormals, couples just face these big outside forces instead of having to deal with internal ones. But here they have to deal with those too. So like Ivy has to deal with Bishop's parents, and yeah, it's in this magnified way, but like it's something that all couples have to deal with, like those kinds of things. And I really like that she took the time to explore that, especially since these books are not that long, but she took the time and it makes it more real to me. The last question is, would I recommend these? And I would say yes. I think that the series deserves the hype that it gets. I definitely think it's pretty romancy heavy, but it's still a solid dystopian duology, and that's the other thing. I love a good duology. There's something so satisfying about a duology. Sometimes trilogies feel drawn out, but a duology almost always works. And like I've said before, I feel like a lot of the dystopian elements and the characters were all very well developed. And I definitely plan on checking out Amy Engel as she writes more books, because I really enjoyed these. I actually got the first one from the library, so I'm going to try and buy it soon just so I can have both, so I can reread them, because I did really enjoy them, and they're super fast-paced reads, so you can just like blow through them in a day, or at least I did. So yes, that is my thought on the Book of Ivy duology. If you have any questions or comments about the books that are non-spoilery, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!